Now, let's turn to our top story for you this morning. Defendant Bryan Kohberger accepting a plea offer from the state of Idaho to avoid the death penalty. Now, as of right now, his change of plea hearing is set to happen tomorrow. And if the judge approves the plea agreement, he would be sentenced to serve 4 consecutive life sentences. According to a letter sent to the victim's family members, Kaylee Gonzalez's family issued this reaction on Facebook after the news broke, saying, quote, "It's true. We're beyond furious at the state of Idaho. They have failed us. Please give us some time. This was very unexpected. We appreciate all your love and support," end quote. Kohberger was set to go to trial in August for the murders of Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, and Xana Cornoto, all stabbed to death at their off-campus home back in November of 2022. So this morning, we're asking, is this plea offer justice for the victims? I've got 2 outstanding guests. I want to bring them in now. I have high-profile criminal defense attorney and trial ad professor Don Milarsik with us. He's also death penalty certified. He's done many death penalty cases in the state of Ohio. And I have with me in South Carolina the state solicitor in South Carolina's 16th Judicial Circuit, attorney Kevin Brackett. He also helped to famously put away defendant Susan Smith with our friend and colleague Tommy Pope. Kevin, Don, good morning to you both. So let's start with that important question that everybody's asking. Is this justice? Curious what you both think. Don, would you start us off, please?
Sure, Julie. I think that it is. You mentioned in your opening statement that this will provide the family, it'll provide the communities, it'll provide Mr. Kohberger some finality. There won't be endless appeals that could drag on for decades. And, I have spoken to hundreds of jurors on death penalty cases, and these are very, very tough cases. As you know, it requires a unanimous verdict to impose a death sentence. So one person on that jury of 12 could prevent a death sentence, and we would end up exactly right here. And as you said, Julie, the prosecutor knows this case better than anyone. They know the evidence not only of guilt innocence, but they know the evidence that would be presented at a mitigation trial. That's a whole second trial where the sole issue is the jury has to decide what is the appropriate sentence, where things like mental health are taken into consideration, things like mental issues that the defendant may have that might not rise to the level of not guilty by insanity, but may rise to the level of some juror to say, I think this weighs in favor of a life sentence. So this plea, this agreement avoids all that uncertainty, avoids all those appeals. And we have to remember, this is death by prison. He will die in prison. It is a humiliating, degrading, dehumanizing, isolating, punishing sentence to serve the balance of your life in prison. So he will certainly be punished for his crimes, and I believe that this resolution is a just resolution.
Oh, Don, you're so right. Boy, that gave me chills hearing you say that, death by prison. That's one way to look at this. Thank you for that. And thank you for the reminder as well that this would be 2 parts, that fancy word, the bifurcated trial, 2 trials. Thank you for reminding us of that. It wouldn't be over after trial 1. And Kevin Brackett, let me turn to you on that point, because you also have tried death penalty cases. I named one of them, Susan Smith's case. You know what this is like, that weighty process of going through whether to pursue capital punishment or not. Your thoughts on whether this offer is just?
Well, Julie, I tell victims over and over again, there's no golden yardstick that absolutely measures what is or isn't justice in any given case. And there is no number or word, life or death, or any number of years that's going to bring their loved one back. It all depends on so many different factors, the quality of the evidence that you have, so many different things that come into play when you're making this decision. But it does give the victims in this case finality. They don't have to live with this case on appeal for the next 25 to 30 years. And in South Carolina, it is most likely that you will try a capital case at least twice. Once, and then it'll get reversed, and you'll have to go back and do it again. So it really is an arduous process, and the victims' families have to go through in excruciating detail what happened to their loved one. So, what is justice? So that's a question that's been pondered for centuries, and will go forward. But I think that this does does give a tremendous amount of benefit to the victims in this case. And I understand that not all of them are happy, but overall, I think this is a reasonable conclusion to the case.
Really great points, Kevin. I love what you said about, there's no universal formula or, a yardstick to measure this. I mean, every case is different. And as you pointed out, what if it comes back? What if it comes back and then these families have to do it all over again? We know you both would have great points this morning. I have more questions for you. Let's look at a clip first from Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee Gonsalves' dad. He was on News Nation last night.
This is the opposite of our will. There was no majority believing that this was acceptable. I want to honor all the police officers, the FBI, and all the people that work their tail off. The failure is at the court level, 100%.
Okay, Kevin, I want to go to you here. Being a prosecutor, what might you say to the Gonsalves family this morning if you were the team of these Idaho prosecutors handling this? They're upset. Certainly there are going to be conversations before tomorrow when the hearing is set to take place. What might you say to them today?
Well, Julie, I think the larger point that needs to be examined first is I've spent hundreds, thousands of hours with victims in my conference room in cases just like this one. And it's hard, even when you're dealing with one family, to get them all to agree on a course of action. And even if you can get them all to come together, usually there's always been the third cousin from Paducah that nobody's seen in 20 years who flies in to vent his spleen about what should happen, and he's not happy and he wants his 3 minutes of fame on the local news. But getting four families to agree is extraordinarily difficult. You're not going to make that happen. So somebody has to make the final call. And I'm going to reserve judgment on the prosecutor in this case until they've had a chance to explain what their position is. But I suspect at the end of the day, we'll find out that some of these families did not want to go through the rigors of trial. And this prosecutor had to make the decision of trying to get the most justice that he could for everybody. And somebody was inevitably going to be disappointed. So for the Gonsalves family, there is nothing you can say that can salve the wound that they've suffered. It's only going to be time that heals that. And I understand how upset they are, because they've focused their hopes and dreams on resolution, on a death verdict, and they think that's going to make them happy. It wouldn't in the end. But I understand their disappointment, and I'm sorry for them. They certainly have suffered a terrible loss.
Certainly. Well said, Kevin. I think all of our hearts are breaking for them. And there's no sure thing in this case, as we talked about earlier. Don, you touched on this. Being on the defense side, your perspective, I would love to know what you might say as someone who's incredibly compassionate, a parent, you are as well, what you might say to those family members having done these cases on the defense side.
Well, it's an incredibly difficult, tragic case. But what I can share, and what I do share with juries, is, look, I've done this for over 30 years. I've represented over 20 individuals charged with the death penalty. And the person that the state kills 20, 25 years from now is not the same person that committed these horrific offenses. Julie, you and I have talked about how we were raised and going to church and hearing about things like redemption and forgiveness and mercy. And we have all benefited from those things at times where we didn't deserve it. I know I have been given a second chance and been given mercy when I didn't deserve it. And that's an easy thing to hear about on Sunday. It's a tough thing to live on Monday through Friday, but I have seen it. I have seen the men that the state of Ohio has killed, and they are different individuals 25, 30 years later, when they have lived in isolation with their thoughts, with the ability to kind of understand and see the impact of their crimes. And they are different individuals. So it's tough to say, Mr. Kohberger, who he will be in 15, 20, 30 years from now. But that power of redemption, that mercy that is even unearned, I think is a more powerful force than this idea of vengeance or punishment. And it is a powerful, powerful force that we can all benefit from.